I'll just give a very brief intellectual history of how I think we got here, but this is a fairly consensus story. I think many of you will be familiar with this general outline. After the Reformation, and we get to the pre-Enlightenment, the early modern period in philosophy, we could pinpoint maybe Descartes as the father of modern philosophy, and of course, with Descartes begins what we might call the crisis of modernity, which revolves around the epistemic question. How can we know things? Up until the early modern period, while there was always a question about epistemology and how we can know things or how we can have knowledge and what are authoritative sources for knowledge, by and large, most intellectual historians will say that before Descartes and after the Greeks, after Aristotle, really what intellectuals in the Christian tradition were wrestling with were more metaphysical questions, right? This was faith-seeking understanding, already having a faith in, and that's from Augustine and then later Anselm, already having a faith in the revealed Word of God. We could just start with metaphysics and metaphysical speculation about the nature of God, the nature of Christ, the nature of man, and so on and so forth. But when we get to Descartes, there's this great unraveling of the authorities, the sources of authorities for our knowledge about the world. First, there's the deconstruction of the Bible that starts with people like Spinoza. And then, of course, if there's doubts about the Bible, then there's going to be doubts about the church as an authority, as the authoritative custodian of revelation knowledge. And we kind of know the story from there. And I would say, and I've written an article on this in Touchstone magazine called The Eclipse of Reason. After Descartes' method of doubt, of course, Descartes comes back to arguments for God and winds up still having a fully theistic worldview at the end of his speculations. But as this sort of abandonment of the traditional sources of knowledge occurs, we sort of get two sides of the same sort of materialistic coin or philosophical coin. One goes the empiricist route that is found mainly in England, which leads to something like the project of the natural sciences as being the source, the great source of our authority going forward. It is to the natural sciences that we will look to give us knowledge about the world, about man's place in the world, and potentially even about how now shall we live. On the continent, it was the rationalists, which had sort of a lineage from those who are more certainly more Christian, more theistic, like Leibniz. And then you get to Kant and Hegel, the idealists and the absolute idealists. And this sort of goes in a different direction that eventually is not necessarily antagonistic to the natural sciences, but posits something other than just the natural sciences as a source of knowledge. And this is history or the social life of man itself. And you get into social theory. And of course, the great prophet of social theory is Marx, who at the end of the day was a Hegelian, but flipping Hegel's idealism on his head, had a materialistic understanding of how the social supervenes on the material substructure. For Marx, of course, you change the material substructure, you change the type of society that you will get. And that sort of ends, and both of these sort of end in what we've called in the recent past scientism on the one side, and what we might just call today wokeism on the other. Okay.
These 1 hour sessions are really geared to have a few goals. First, we want to give you a sneak peek at the kinds of topics that we talk about on a regular basis on the campus and things that can help equip you with historical, scientific, and philosophical reasons for believing that Christianity is true. If you're brand new to us, Ratio Christi is Latin, and it means the reason for Christ. That's our niche. We help Christian students make a case for Christianity and invite non-Christian students to examine the evidence for Jesus in a rational way. Second, we want to introduce more people to those of us on staff that are doing boots on the ground work in Ratio Christi and maybe even potentially near you. And because of that, most of these webinars are going to feature Ratio Christi apologists from across the country, and you'll get to hear how they are changing lives on campus for Jesus.